Salespeople are coin operated. So if you put together a compensation plan that says this is how you're going to make money, there can be goodness for both the company as well as the sales rep. So if you tie your corporate objectives, every company should do this at the beginning of the year and check it quarterly to see if they're on plan. If you tie your incentive plans to those corporate objectives, both parties win, and you can really design a plan that the sales rep can make a lot of money if they're doing really well, but then the company can as well. And I'll give you a quick example of that.
Today's guest is Bernie Kassar, an accomplished senior executive turned founder and CEO with a proven track record of building and leading high-performing teams in customer success, support, renewals, account management, alliances, and business development. Bernie is a master of the go-to-market strategy and brings a wealth of experience to the table. He is the founder of Latitude 39, a company that specializes in incentive compensation management solutions for small to mid-sized businesses, streamlining the tracking and payment of commissions, bonuses, and incentives. And then beyond business, Bernie is a great fan of burgers and even better sunsets. So bringing a nice mix of drive and appreciation for life's simple joys. Welcome to Prospecting on Purpose, Bernie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I am excited to talk to you today. We were able to chat a little bit before we hit record. And what we're going to talk about today is really building top performing sales teams and then motivating them to achieve their top results. And I think self-motivation and team motivation are huge topics for the listeners of this show. But before we get into that, Bernie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and Latitude 39?
Sure. So I live out in Northern California. I grew up in the Midwest in Minnesota, of all places. Was actually born in North Africa, but moved at a young age to the Midwest, which was a culture shock from a weather point of view, just to name the top reasons. There's a couple of others. But I've been since I've been out in California since 99, I've been in the software space, and I've been predominantly in the incentive compensation management or sales performance management, two different terms that we use for what we do, for over 25 years, three different companies, Latitude 39 being the third. And our whole goal is to motivate sales folks. So it's to streamline the process of paying commissions, but really driving behavior because incentives work, and we all know that. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about that comment that you just made. So incentives work. I mean, I have definitely said, show me the money to a boss once that hindsight probably wasn't the best move. I pulled a Jerry Maguire, but talk a little bit about like the money and maybe the logic behind it. Like why are you focusing on this and why is it working?
Yeah, I feel like if you go into a sales profession, and this is not a derogatory term because I started off in sales, but salespeople are coin operated. So if you put together a compensation plan that says this is how you're going to make money, there can be goodness for both the company as well as the sales rep. So if you tie your corporate objectives, every company should do this at the beginning of the year and check it quarterly to see if they're on plan. If you tie your incentive plans to those corporate objectives, both parties win, and you can really design a plan that the sales rep can make a lot of money if they're doing really well, but then the company can as well. And I'll give you a quick example of that. If you're selling higher margin products and you have your reps focus on that, the company does well as the rep. And it's funny how when you put focus in a compensation plan, and this goes back to coin operated, sales reps quickly gravitate to where they're going to make the highest percentage in a sale. And so really being able to provide that sort of bridge between corporate objectives and comp plans is huge. But to answer your question specifically, I think it's just the nature and the DNA of the right sales reps. There's a lot of people that go in sales that shouldn't be in sales, but you quickly identify that. And once you know the person that's driven by their comp plan, then those are the profiles you should be looking to hire. And we can talk about whether they're good or not in a minute, but for specific reasons, incentives work because of the DNA and the profile that you're hiring.
Okay, I like that because one of the things that in my background and expertise, and when you're looking at different teams, it's almost like you have to identify who are the hunters and who are the farmers,
Yep.
and understand what motivates them because not everyone is one size fits all. Everyone has different reasons why they show up to work and why they service their clients.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. You have the folks that are looking to find new relationships, can build rapport quickly, trust quickly, and explain their product. Well, in the pre-call, you were talking about how a lot of salespeople get trained to just sell features and functions and product stuff versus the really good ones understand the problem that the client needs solved
Mhm.
and tie more of the results and tie more of the story around how we're going to help you get from point A to point B, with the product and the features never really being mentioned. They're an intricate part of the process, but when you focus on somebody's pain, it becomes completely different, with the reaction you're going to get from them and the response.
Do you find, so I read the quote the other day about if you're selling vitamins versus painkillers, you're selling pleasure versus pain, and you just spoke to that. It's what we understand when we're selling client problems. How does that translate to incentives though? I mean, obviously you want people to take action for pleasure, or you want to be a positive motivator, not a carrot versus the stick. So how does that come into play in your work? What do you see your clients do that are successful with not making it a stick but still getting the behavior they're looking for?
Yeah. I think visibility. So a lot of times you come into these workforces and one of their biggest problems is retention. And so it comes back to visibility of your comp and more importantly, trust. Are you getting paid properly? I can't tell you how many companies we've walked into where the VP of sales and the head of finance, there's a little bit of a clash, and you really want to build that trust because it flows all the way down to your sales reps. And if your top performers don't feel like they're getting paid properly and they leave, that has a ripple effect across the whole organization. So it's just providing the visibility is the first step. So the rep knows that, okay, this is what I'm going to get paid. Whether
Mhm.
they get the payment within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even at the end of the quarter, doesn't matter as much as getting acknowledgement that this is what I'm going to get paid when the pay period is over, and giving them that visibility before is one huge thing. Second, within our software, and a lot of people do this outside of software, it's just more difficult, is giving them a way of estimating their commissions. So if I configure this order this way, this is how I'm going to get paid, and this is how much commission I'm going to get. And they might reconfigure the order so that they're not discounting as much, and they're not doing certain things that are going to benefit the rep as well as the company.
Okay, that's very clever because most of the people that I work with, most of the listeners of the show, you have a whole menu of things that you can sell, and it
Yeah.
can become complicated very quickly. And so you obviously want to find the right product for the client. That's, baseline expectation, but finding the right puzzle pieces. I see a lot of people race to the bottom just to get the deal, and they're almost afraid to show the
Value.
numbers. And that's why I like to stay in the luxury space and sell business model versus commodity. But I love that you can configure it in a way where you understand what you're going to make on the project and or on the sale. I think that's very clever.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I think it's human nature to round numbers, especially for sales reps, um, and jumping quickly to a 20% discount or a 10% discount versus, you know what, that's going to be tough. How about 7%? And those
Mm.
3 percentage points matter over course of time throughout the whole year when you're starting to look at things versus just going to the quick even number, splitting the difference, things of that nature, make it a little bit harder. And over half the times, you're going to win the lower discount amount. And that's going to add up over the course of the year. versus always going to the 10%. You might end up at the 10%, but what if you end up at 9 or 8 or 7 versus just quickly going from 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 or 15 to 20?
Mhm. And I think I don't want to speak for all salespeople, but I'll speak from my own lens of experience. Like
Yeah.
you're out and about, you're on the road, you're driving, you're at lunches, you're at events. It's really hard. For me, it was really hard to then come home and sit at my screen and just spend all the time figuring it out. So part of the 10% rounding is just for ease because I didn't
Oh,
tool. So I like that example why visibility helps ease that pain.
yeah. And it's mental math. I'll do the same thing. So it's taken a while to figure out, okay, round numbers don't have to be the way you run your life.
Mhm. Okay. Oh my God. That needs to be the call out quote. Round numbers don't have to be the way you run your life. But that's a helpful reminder. What are some other do you find like a gamifying aspect to it? Like what are some of the other benefits to giving visibility to the team?
So there's definitely just your regular comp plan, but if you introduce spiffs, are you familiar with spiffs in
Um,
your world?
we,
Yeah.
we can explain it for the audience. Why don't we explain what a spiff is?
Yeah, special performance incentive fund. So you're looking in a specific period of time. It can be a week, it could be a month, it could be a quarter where you're going to try to drive additional sales on something specific. So you'll say, hey, for this week, and it could be as easy as the person that sets the most appointments is going to get a gift certificate
Mm,
for X amount of dollars. And it could be a dinner or whatever the case might be. You might run I've seen watch spiffs from a Rolex to different types of watches to get people really into that contest mood of there's two things with salespeople. They're definitely coin operated, but they're also very competitive. So
mhm.
they want to be on that leaderboard. And sometimes just being in the top three has more value to them, being recognized as being, the top performer has just more value or the same amount of value as the money that they're going to get because it's a byproduct that they're going to make more money if they're on that top of the list. But just seeing that encourages them. So in our software, you can actually have folks. You can have a list of your top performers, and that's some people call it shaming, some people call it motivation. It all depends on your corporate culture, but there's something to be said about teams knowing where people stand. And if it fits into your culture, it's a fun thing. You can make it into a fun thing versus we talked a little bit about the carrot and the stick, but this is more about recognition and being on top of the game.
Which I think, if you're hustling, you're working hard and you're doing the right things and you're getting your numbers, I
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be nice to be on the leaderboard. It's
Yeah.
so funny too, because right before we started recording, I'm about to hit my next medallion status on Delta, and I open that sucker every day just to see where I'm at. And the other day, I had to book a flight, and I was like, I'm just gonna book first class because I want to like know for sure I'm gonna hit medallion next year. And Delta totally incentivized my behavior. I did not need a first class ticket, but I bought one because I wanted to make sure I
That you
didn't
were
miss the number.
solid for
So
the
it's
next
funny
year.
from the consumer standpoint, you see it too, like it works. Like I want the Peloton badges. I want these things
Yeah.
to help keep me motivated.
Yeah, 100% agree. Actually, there's a Netflix show, and I shouldn't be bringing it up because I can't remember the name of it. But it was talking about being a consumer economy right now, and it was just talking about. It looked like I just saw the trailer, so I haven't watched it yet. But they were interviewing people that worked at Amazon. Where was the other company? But basically, the tactics and the psychology, and I think Facebook did this as well, of keeping people engaged
Mhm.
and how these companies have gone to the next level of making us as a consumer buy stuff we don't even need. And we become that type of, unfortunately, that type of economy, that type of environment it has obviously a ripple effect on just buying a lot of stuff that you don't need that ends up somewhere in some. I think a lot of the storyline or the trailer ends up in dumps and um, places that are hurting the earth, right? But it was just funny how they've gone into the psychology of how to keep us always engaged and wanting to go to the next level.
Well, and I think that it's an interesting little peek into the human psyche too. I have a new health coach that I'm working with, and I bought an Apple Watch, a walking pad, two new pairs of Nikes. Like I went and bought stuff,
Yeah.
and instead of just doing the workout, and I think that that's so, teachable moment for me. But I would love to switch gears a tiny bit, Bernie, and talk about what if someone's not on the top three leaderboard? Have
Yeah.
you found, I mean, sometimes I feel like you see, especially we're recording this near the end of the year, 2024. You start to kind of see people say, "Oh, I'll just start again next year." I mean, have you found what would you do, or I guess what advice would you give to both team leaders and individuals when they're not hitting the numbers?
Yeah. Yeah. So, having been in this space for a long time, it's always been about how do you help the corporation or the company reduce costs by automation, by streamlining the process so you're getting things done quicker so you can have your resources focus on other things. And then the third gem, which we've talked about, is giving that visibility and building that trust between sales organizations and finance so that they can go sell more. When you visibly see your comp plan and you visibly see where you stand, if you sell X amount of products that can get to that accelerator, that's going to drive some behavior. But that's fun to sell to companies, but I have this personal passion of, from a personal standpoint, as an individual contributor and actually having sat in that seat, it's the end of the year. To your point, if you're not there, the best way to start creating a new process that's beneficial, it's obviously discipline, but New Year's resolutions, everybody starts January 1st, but why not start December 1st? Because
Mm.
it takes a while to get those new habits in play. And so, what I would tell people is you really have to, a lot of this is just common sense and basics, but a lot of people just don't do it, is writing down things. So sitting down, writing down what you're going to do different, because obviously what you're doing today isn't working.
Mm.
So coming up with a plan, keeping it simple. I like the rule of three, but you start writing down what you want to accomplish, tie a time period to it, and then break it down to what do you need to do each day in order to get to that next milestone. And you'll quickly realize it's not as hard as you think. When you try to think of the end goal from the beginning and picturing everything, it can be daunting. But if you break it down to, and I'll just give the quick example of, if your sales process, you need to make 50 calls to get 5 appointments, and you need 5 appointments every week in order to get one sale. I'm really simplifying this. Then you need to say, okay, I need to make those 50 calls every day, and that's going to result into the sales numbers you need. And that becomes the discipline part. That's the part where you write it. And that's the part where you look at it once a week at the end of the week. Did I say what I was going to do? But it's really that simple. It's never too late, and it always takes from all the different books I've read, 21 days of doing something straight creates a new habit. And it's not only the books I've read; I've actually experienced it, where you can then become a new person in whatever you're trying to accomplish.
I like that a lot. I mean, I think that it's so powerful to think about December 1st as a New Year's resolution. That's why I'm starting my health coaching now during the holidays. So I'm not delaying it till January. But
Yeah,
I think that there can definitely be this feeling of heaviness when the team's not meeting the goals. The sales team meetings are a lot quieter. It's hard to find things to celebrate. So when
yeah,
when that happens, let's say we're mid-year next year
yep,
and a team's not performing, what are some things just from a outside of staying disciplined, what are some
yeah,
different things that leaders can do to really help their
yeah.
team?
So at a macro level, I mean, the economy has been a little bit different depending on what industry you're in over the course of the last 24 months.
Mhm.
And so that's the hard part. As leaders, everybody can be doing all the right things, but things aren't lining up because just there's people that are waiting to pull the trigger. I think this election was a big deal because I think there was people that didn't matter who won, they weren't going to do anything because of the uncertainty. And I'm hoping we get over that hump in January, because now people know what the outcome is, and now let's try to move forward with things. But it's that mid-year slump where things are happening. Yeah, I find talking, there's two things. One, there's the team motivation. So when you're on those team calls, it could be as simple as starting the first 2 minutes with a motivational video.
Mm.
I think videos are very powerful, and sometimes just changing things up than the normal routine. Hey, how's your weekend? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's jump into it. You jump right into the numbers. But telling stories are very powerful, especially personal stories. So if you can find a video that tells a bigger story, and we all know how videos grasp emotion, they do. Nike does a great job of this. You mentioned Nike earlier, but they just do a great job of those commercials or videos that are about motivation. I like sports, so sports videos are really compelling, but there's a lot of business videos that are compelling with short speeches where other people do the work for you. But then the key is, after that video, have a story that ties a personal aspect of, as a leader. Hey, I showed you that video because X, Y, and Z. And then and anytime you can be vulnerable and talk about times that are tough in your life that you're able to flip it, I feel like I'm talking about things that can sometimes be common sense, but everybody needs reminders, even myself. And so it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Or remember that one boss that I had that did this? I love that. And so it's a one thing that you might not even get a reaction in that meeting, but a month later, hey, when you played this, it really changed something inside of me.
Oh, I love that, because I think that you're hitting on the vulnerability piece. You're hitting on, why am I showing you this? And I
Yeah.
think that's really where, because there's so much noise, sometimes salespeople are inundated with things to do, KPIs, metrics, etc. It's like, just tell me why you're doing this. Why am I doing this activity? And I think that that's what I like about your background, is you're showing people the why
Yeah.
from the individual standpoint, the team standpoint, and the organization standpoint.
The why is huge. I mean, you could carry that right back to our earlier part of the conversation with the features, functions, talking about who cares?
Yeah.
Why would I want to do this? And what are going to be and start asking the questions that are going to help with the why, and starting with the why, whether you're giving a presentation, almost start with the end of, hey, let me tell you why we're going to do this.
I like that.
Now let's walk through the details, because then you're not dragging it along. It's like, this is the why. I think these phones have become a huge distraction to everybody.
Mhm.
And so I think focus is something that's being lost along the way. And we can definitely talk about it now or a little bit later about what just is, if we want to continue talking about the personal, how to keep people personally motivated. There's this focus aspect that I think is lost, and it's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate because everybody's caught in this trap with those phones.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it. And I think a nice kind of bridge between the professional and the personal would be around the lines of aligning the sales team incentives with the company organizational goals.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like, even if you're a solopreneur or a business of one or a small business, or you're an individual contributor at a larger organization, understanding where, like, what are your goals and what are you getting to and what are you focusing on for the year,
Yeah.
that's definitely what's going to differentiate the varsity team from everyone else, is the people who can stay disciplined and focused. So I would love to talk a little bit more about, how does the personal piece play into this in making our sales team successful?
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of work. I mentioned, always focused on the corporate aspect of how do you make it easier for the company to pay commissions? And then there's also a byproduct where it's benefiting the sales rep. But always in the back of my mind, I've always thought of, I like self-help books. I like self-help gurus, whether it's Tony Robbins, folks like that, because they really break it down to some simple things, which is write down your goals, create a plan, and then execute against that plan. And you will, if you monitor your results, then you have the ability to go change what's not working. But if you don't have something to compare against, then you don't know what's working, what's not working. So we've really been focused. In December, we're going to release a product. It's called Hit Quota. It'll be at hitquota.com, but it's not available quite yet. But the whole idea is two things. In the early version of it is all about how do you have a purpose in what you're doing? And then more importantly, how do you then execute it by focus time? And
Mm,
it's going to be a landing page where you have a dashboard as an individual contributor, where you have the things that are important to you right in front of you. Certain metrics, activities you want to do on a daily basis. It's a way of keeping you accountable, but also motivated. You'll have beautiful pictures of just nature, which I think is great to wake up to, with quotes and mantras. Really quick little doses that you don't even know are happening, but they're positive doses versus the consumer doses I was talking about before, and they're personalized. So you have the ability to write down what your plan is going to be, how you're going to execute against that plan. But the key part that I think a lot of people aren't taught today in this interruption driven society, unfortunately, is focus time. And
mhm.
so if you're familiar with the Pomodoro method, where you take 25 minutes to do something that's focused and remove all distraction, take a 5-minute break, and then come back to what you were doing. And you can change those times up, but that's the starter version, is 25 minutes of focus, 5 minutes of break, and then back to 25 minutes. Over time, you can increase that focus time. What we're trying to do with this release of Hit Quota is get sales reps to learn how to provide focus time on what they need to do. And I guarantee you, it allows you to start thinking, getting deeper into how you're going to execute with an actual deal, with an actual call, with an actual meeting that's going to result in better. It's just going to have better results because you're not having all the distractions and you have the think time, which I believe we've lost a lot of think time, especially as sales individuals, because of the distractions.
Well, it's so funny you say that too. I was chatting with somebody the other day about how coming out of the pandemic, it feels like life is back to normal, but on double time, like double speed.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we were so available. Everyone was available during the pandemic because we were stuck at home. You could
Yeah.
access people more. Now we're not stuck at home, but we have that same level of expectation on response times. And I think as a culture, I love that we're talking about this now because we almost need to retrain ourselves to not continue to behave that way.
Yeah.
Like, I wear my noise canceling headphones for 25 minutes, and I have
Yeah.
to put my phone in the other room to get anything done these days, and it's helping a lot, but I would love to learn, I'll make sure that we include that in the show notes, but the hit quota seems like it's tying the personal with the professional together.
Yeah. So we're working through our tagline. So I hate releasing things before they're done, but I think this is kind of fun. So it's more about what is your purpose? And that purpose can cover a lot of things, from personal families, accomplishments you want to make, to material things that you want to buy, certain milestones you want to hit. I want to be 200% of my, but what is your purpose? And the purpose usually has some emotional tied to it. um, then it's actually, okay, how do I focus on that? So creating that plan that will allow you to execute against that, and then actually having the focus time to go back and do what you say you're going to do. So purpose, plan, focus, in my opinion, is equals results and productivity, which is all what we want, right?
Well, and it's such a different type of incentive because it's motivation from
Yeah.
your heart, really. I mean, my new health coach is my friend, and I feel more motivated to do the work because I want her business to be successful. I want to be a great case study for her. So it's kind of putting the goal outside of myself. And
Yeah.
that's been really helping motivate me. So if you're looking at, you want to provide, buy a home for your family in 2025, well, that's going to help you motivate to hit your sales numbers so you can hit your commission and incentives, and you can make the money that you want to accomplish your personal goals. So they very are much hand in hand. And sometimes I think just companies, individuals, we separate them, but they're not separate. They're tied to.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's the application is really for two consumers. One, I want to give the power to the individual contributor, so the actual sales rep, at a very affordable price, so that they can have a plan. They see it every day. They see the example of the house was perfect. What if you had a picture of the house you want to build or buy, and you tied a timeline to it, and you saw that repeatedly throughout the day? It's going to keep you motivated. Or you saw your family in Hawaii because you want to take that vacation. It's got an emotional tie. That's a huge part of that day-to-day interaction, and being able to tie the emotional and personal piece to it.
Yeah, and I like that we talked about this too, Bernie, because I do think that sales professionals sometimes get this, like, oh, commission breath, pitch
Yeah,
slapping. You hear all that language, and that's just not, for in the sake of my listeners, that's just not the case, because we're varsity players over here. But I do think that that's something that we have to kind of overcome as an industry, and
yeah,
it's not getting any easier. So I really appreciated that this conversation was brought up as part of the incentive conversation, because it's not all monetary, but the
yeah.
money part usually gets us to the other goals that we want to achieve.
100%. I said there's two buyers. So one is the individual contributor. The second one is for sales teams. So a leader, whether you're a leader of a territory, if you have 2 to 10 reps, or you're the head of the whole organization and you have hundreds or thousands of people. We sell to the SMB, so thousands is not really relevant. But if you could use this solution, if you do have a bigger sales team, where the sales leader now has a platform. So everybody's using the same format of tying personal to corporate objectives of how they're going to meet their comp plan. But then the sales leader has a communication device where people are already here. They can do
Mhm.
a short video at the beginning of the week to get people motivated, and boom, they have it in everybody's hands. And it's anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 minutes, but they're telling them what's on their mind and being able to provide that. They can put in some quotes or mantras for the week that are interesting and maybe very timely for whatever that company is doing. So if they're doing a launch, if you find some cool quotes about innovation and things of that nature, you get to inject that. But it's all about this positive dashboard that's there for the individual, but also we're going to give it the capabilities to sales teams to have that same communication and making it personal.
I love that. I could say, hey, sales rep Jerry helped Sally Mae, and here's how her life has improved. It could be like case studies or different customer stories to really kind of drive the purpose behind it, because selling with purpose obviously is something that's important to us as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Well, Bernie, what before we wrap up, is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to make sure we hit on?
Yeah. So if this is selfishly a personal commercial, I think if you're a small company out there that has a sales team that is looking to automate the process of commissions and tying it to your CRM, if you don't have a CRM, you still want to automate the commission to get the benefits of visibility. Check out Latitude 39. I talked a little bit about Hit Quota that's coming in December. That's tying the sales team, or actually tying the individual contributors' personal goals to what they're trying to accomplish for the company, and really making it the leaders that understand that you drive behavior by making it personal really do some really cool things and build successful businesses, as well as build very unique relationships one-on-one. So that would be the second part. But the third part that has nothing to do with selling software or Latitude 39 is I'm really passionate about people writing down their goals, building out a process and having that discipline and being able to compare where they're at any given time. We're just providing tools to help accelerate that. But even if you don't use tools, I think just really being purpose driven and understanding what you want and being able to write that down. There's a lot of studies, scientific, of just the act of writing, not typing, but actually writing things down really helps you start achieving those types of goals or whatever you write down.
Wonderful. And for 2025, to everyone listening, we're having purpose driven motivations. We're understanding why we're doing things, and then we're writing them down. Bernie, I will link everything in the YouTube comments, the shows on YouTube, and also in the show notes for the streaming platforms. Where can people reach out to you directly if they want to connect?
So LinkedIn is a great place to connect directly, and it's just Bernie Kassar, and that'll all be in the notes. If you're interested in learning more about Latitude 39, if you go to our website, there's a contact us button. So feel free to fill that out and make sure you mention where you heard about us. So mention the show. If you put in just Sarah in capital, that would work. But if you mention the show, that helps understand the impact that we're having out there. Big fan of your show, and I think you should keep doing what you're doing, because you're not only helping sales teams, but you're helping the individuals that are listening as well.
Thanks, Bernie. Thanks for saying that. I will say doing a podcast is a nice exercise in discipline.
Yeah, it is. It's just,
Really had to work on it.
I think the other thing is you have an impact, so you're giving it back or paying it forward, however you want to call it. But it's you never know how these types of shows or different, I get a lot of ideas from listening to podcasts. So you never know how you're impacting somebody, because they're not always going to send you a note, but it's just a cool feeling that you have the ability to reach masses with a positive message.
Thank you. And I get to have cool conversations like this. I learned so much from our conversation today. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come on Prospecting on Purpose.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I likewise. You always want to be a learner.
That's 2025 goal too, team. We're learning always. All right.
Always.
Thanks so much, Bernie.
Thanks.